Today I want to talk about some recently released single-player games that you should give a chance. We are going to be talking about games that just released last week to games from a couple of months ago, but all these games are still pretty new. We're not going over 1 year old, so yeah, some new titles, worth a shot, let's go. I had zero idea this game was coming, like zero. I wasn't tracking it, I hadn't seen anything about it, but as a fan of games like Uncharted and Tomb Raider, this was a nice treat for me. Weird because almost everyone hates slow climbing in games, but I don't know, I almost always seem to enjoy it. So Cairn is a slow, methodical climbing game, and I must say it is pretty hard. So it's from the game makers who made Fury and Haven, which are two completely different games from each other, and Cairn is somehow completely different from both of those too. So the whole thing is you are Ava. She's this famous professional mountaineer, and she's setting out to summit Mount Kami, which is this mountain that 30 people try every year, and basically nobody makes it back. Like it says in the tutorial area that nobody has ever reached the summit, ever. And Ava just decides she's gonna be the one. That's it. That's the whole game. You start at the bottom, you climb to the top. And I know that sounds simple, but like, oh my god, is there a lot going on underneath that. Okay, so the climbing is what makes this whole thing work, and I have to explain it because it's not what you're probably picturing. This isn't like Breath of the Wild where you just hold a button and watch a stamina bar. I control each of Ava's 4 limbs individually. Like I'm literally placing her left hand, then her right foot, then reaching up with her right hand, one move at a time. And the game automatically suggests which limb to move next, but I can override that whenever I want. And what that means is that every single move is a decision. I'm reading the rock face, I'm looking for cracks to get my fingers into, little ledges for her toes, and I'm thinking ahead like, okay, if I grab there, can I reach the next hold? It's not sexy or smooth, it's real, and I genuinely felt like I was learning to think like a climber the longer I played. And then on top of all of that, I'm managing her stamina, which doesn't show up as a bar on screen. There's no UI telling me how tired she is, I just have to watch her. I can see her hands shaking, I can hear her breathing get heavier, and when her stamina is really low, her fingers just start slipping, and I'm scrambling to find a foothold fast or I'm going down. I have chalk I can use to get a little more grip temporarily. I have pitons I can drive into the rock to clip my rope to as a safety anchor, but I only have so many of those, so every time I use one I'm thinking, was that the right call? Should I save it? And there were absolutely times where I didn't save it, and I fell and I lost like 20 minutes of progress. The survival stuff layers on top of all of this. I'm managing hunger, thirst, cold, my overall physical condition. I can set up a bivouac camp to rest, bandage up my fingers, cook food that gives different buffs like energy tea for more stamina, stuff for more grip strength. And it's genuinely that Breath of the Wild cooking feeling where I'm sitting there in my tent in the middle of this mountain in the rain cooking stuff, and it just feels cozy and right. There are also remnants of past climbers all over the mountain, notes, abandoned camps, cave paintings from a lost civilization that used to live on the mountain. Now, is it perfect? No. The controls can get a little janky and inconsistent sometimes, like Ava will just not register a flat surface, and I'd be gritting my teeth trying not to fling her off an edge. The buff durations feel a little short sometimes relative to how long some climbs take, and the personal story around Ava herself is kind of thin. Like she's interesting, but the game doesn't dig super deep into her as a character. And I get that, it's just not really the focus. But look, I came away from this game feeling like I actually climbed a mountain, like I genuinely felt that. It's been about 4 years since the first High on Life dropped, and honestly, that game surprised the hell out of me. I never expected a goofy, cartoony FPS full of dumb jokes to be that fun. So going into the sequel, the big question for me was simple. Does it actually improve things, or is it just more the same? Gameplay-wise, yeah, it's pretty similar. You're still running around with talking alien guns called Gatlians, each with their own abilities. Some of them return, some are new. My favorite by far were the dual pistols Jan and Travis, a married couple that absolutely shred enemies if you spam the trigger. I love how the guns aren't just for shooting either. They also have abilities that help with traversal and puzzles, so you end up mixing them together in combat, which feels really satisfying. The gunplay is still the best part for me. There are tons of enemy types flying around, teleporting, jumping everywhere, so I was constantly switching guns and chaining abilities together to deal with them. And the boss fights? Some of them are actually pretty creative. There's even one fight that happens inside the damn main menu, which is just weird in a fun way. Exploration is there too. You can roam around, find loot boxes, tear down bounty posters, do little side activities, stuff like that. Honestly though, most of that side content felt kinda weak. The funniest moments usually came from random shit happening while exploring, not the activities themselves. Traversal is better this time because of the skateboard, which lets you grind rails and move around really fast. It feels great, until the game suddenly throws another puzzle in your face. And man, there are a lot of puzzles. Way too many. I'd be zooming through an area having fun, and then suddenly I'm stuck solving some annoying puzzle that kills the pacing. And pacing is honestly my biggest complaint. The game loves stopping the action to shove in comedy bits. Some of them are funny, but others just drag on forever. The story itself is pretty simple. After the first game, a bounty gets placed on your head, so now the hunter becomes the hunted. It's a cool idea, but I never really got emotionally invested in any of the characters. This game is more about jokes, chaos, and shooting aliens than deep storytelling. There were also a decent number of bugs during my playthrough. Nothing completely game-breaking, but I ran into audio glitches, quests not progressing properly, and some stuttering during autosaves. Overall though, I still had a good time with High on Life. The combat is fun, the humor is still there, and if you liked the first game, you'll probably enjoy this one too. It just has some pacing issues, weak side content, and a few technical problems holding it back. If I had to score it, I'd give it around an 8 out of 10. Okay, everyone knows about this game. I thought this was an amazing game, but I am still not gonna call it the best thing ever, and it won way too many awards, definitely more than it deserved in my opinion. Like, come on man, KCD 2 clearly deserved the best RPG award, but anyway, about Expedition 33 itself. So the setup. The world is called Lumiere. It's the city that is very much inspired by Belle Epoque France, like the late 1800s Paris vibes. Gorgeous architecture, cafes, boulevards, except every single year a mysterious giant figure called the Paintress wakes up and paints a number on this massive obelisk across the sea, and everyone in the world who is that age or older just disappears, vanishes into nothing. It's called the gommage, and every year that number goes down by 1, and this year she's going to paint 33. So, you are part of Expedition 33, a group of people who are mostly 33 years old, who are basically setting out on what is probably a suicide mission to try and stop the Paintress once and for all, because every expedition before them has failed, and nobody has ever come back. And I just want to say, that premise, that setup, it gets going immediately. Like, there's no slow start here, no 3 hours of tutorials and world building tech stumps. It just throws you in and trusts you to figure it out. Now, combat. The combat is... Okay, this is the thing I want to spend the most time on because it is genuinely unlike anything I've played before, and I think it's the reason people are saying this game changed the genre. So on the surface, it's turn-based. You have a party, enemies have turns, you pick your actions. Standard JRPG stuff. You got your Final Fantasy X influences, your Persona influences, it's all there. But then the real-time layer on top of that is where it gets crazy. Every single enemy attack can be dodged or parried in real time. Like, while it's their turn, while they're attacking, I'm timing button presses to either dodge out of the way or slam a parry and completely negate the damage. And landing a perfect parry not only blocks all the damage, but charges up a counter that just does massive damage back. And the timing windows are strict, like it is not easy. I missed a lot of parries, a lot, especially early on, and I died. I died a decent amount. But the thing is, every single death felt like my fault. Like, I never once felt like the game cheated me, I just wasn't good enough yet. And then, gradually, I started getting it. Started reading enemy attack patterns, started getting those parries consistently, and it feels incredible. And then, the build system on top of that. Oh man, you got Pictos, these equipable accessories that completely change how your characters play. You can build toward massive damage, toward tanking, toward generating AP faster, toward getting bonuses for landing perfect parries. Each character plays completely differently. Gustav, Mael, Lune, Verso, Seal, they all have their own mechanics and skill trees and weapons. The world and art direction? Look, I mean, I genuinely stopped multiple times just to look around. It's this fractured reality where pieces of the old world are just floating around and recombined in ways that shouldn't make sense, but look incredible. Floating islands, impossible cityscapes, an ocean floor you walk through with marine life drifting above you. The enemy designs go from charming to terrifying to just straight up bizarre. The music goes from sweeping orchestral stuff to roaring electric guitars to like 80s synth pop, and it all somehow works perfectly together. Now, is it perfect? Okay, The lip syncing is a little off sometimes, and some character models are weaker than others up close. There's no map in the exploration areas because some of these areas are big and it's really easy to get turned around. And PC Gamer, and I want to shout this out because I think it's a fair take, PC Gamer found the real-time parry system more exhausting than exhilarating and gave it a lower score than most, and I understand that reaction completely. Like, if you go into this wanting a chill, relaxing turn-based RPG where you sit back and pick your moves, the constant real-time pressure of dodging and parrying is going to wear on you. It is genuinely demanding, and some of the mid-game areas do go on a little longer than they probably need to. And yeah, there's a plot twist at some point that some reviewers felt was a bit forced. I'm not going to say what it is, obviously, but just know that not everyone landed on it the same way. But look, I walked away from this game just sitting there like, wow, like I genuinely felt something at the end.
Maybe that's mine today.
Resident Evil Requiem. This is a big deal. This is Capcom going back to Raccoon City for the first time since it got completely obliterated. And just that alone is like, if you have any history with this franchise, that feels so different, like walking through places you recognize completely decimated and overgrown and broken. So the basic setup, you've got two playable characters, Grace Ashcroft, who is this FBI intelligence analyst who gets pulled into something terrifying at a hotel, and then Leon S. Kennedy, who is back and is very much doing Leon things. And the game just alternates between these two, and they play completely differently, which is genuinely the coolest design decision in the whole game. Grace is survival horror, like pure lean RE7 energy. You're tense, you're scared, you're rationing everything. Ammo is not something you have a lot of. And she has this really interesting blood crafting mechanic, where you can harvest blood from infected enemies to make items, ammo, and these injectors that can basically one-shot things if you set it up right. So there's this whole risk-reward thing happening. Do you get close to this terrifying thing and get resources, or do you just run? And that tension is what this franchise does best when it's firing. She also has this hand cannon called Requiem that is basically a panic button, except the ammo is so limited that using it feels like a genuine decision. And the enemies in her sections are just creepy, man. Some of them retain behaviors from when they were human. And then Leon shows up and it's a completely different game. Leon is action. Leon is movement and crowd control. Leon is roundhouse kicking zombies in the face and making it look clean. His sections feel closer to RE4, fast, dangerous, he can pick up weapons enemies drop, and it just has this chaotic energy where you feel like a competent deadly agent, rather than someone trying to survive. It took me a little bit to fully click with his movement-based combat style, honestly, but once it clicked, it felt really satisfying. And then there's the perspective thing. You can switch between first person and third person at literally any time. Grace defaults to first person, which makes her sections claustrophobic and tense. Leon defaults to third person, which makes his sections feel cinematic and action heavy. But you can flip it whenever you want, and both modes genuinely feel designed and intentional, not like one of them was clearly an afterthought. Visually, this is a current gen only game, no last gen support, and it shows. The RE engine continues to be one of the best engines out there, and this is the best it's ever looked. Ray traced lighting, path tracing on PC, the way light behaves in these dark ruined spaces, it's genuinely stunning, like technically impressive, but also just atmosphere. It creates atmosphere in a way that some games never manage. The game is also around 10 hours, which I think is exactly right. It doesn't overstay its welcome, every section feels like it matters, and the pacing between Grace's and Leon's sections keeps you from getting fatigued by either mode for too long. Okay, so God of War Sons of Sparta. And I need to be upfront with you about this one because I think there's a really interesting conversation to have here that goes beyond just like, is this game good or not? Because I genuinely had complicated feelings playing through this, and I think a lot of God of War fans did too. So the context first. This shadow dropped, like literally announced and released the same day on February 12th, 2026 as part of God of War's 20th anniversary. And alongside the announcement, they also revealed they're remaking the original Greek trilogy, which honestly kind of overshadowed this entire game's existence before people even downloaded it. And like, I get why Sony did that, it was a big moment, but I do think Sons of Sparta kinda got buried under that news, which isn't totally fair to it. So what is this thing? It is a 2D pixel art Metroidvania made by Megacat Studios, who are basically a retro indie studio in collaboration with Santa Monica Studio. It's a prequel set way before any other God of War game, like before Ascension even, when Kratos is just a teenager training at the Agoge in Sparta alongside his little brother Deimos. The writing team is the same people who wrote the 2018 game and Ragnarok, which gave me a lot of hope going in. It's $30 for standard, $40 for deluxe. It's PS5 exclusive, digital only, and it clocks in at over 20 hours, which honestly surprised me. The setup is young Kratos and Deimos find out a fellow cadet named Vasilis has gone missing and nobody in Sparta is doing anything about it. And the whole thing is framed as adult Kratos narrating the story to his daughter Calliope, and T.C. Carson is back voicing adult Kratos for the first time in over a decade, which is genuinely awesome to hear. Like, that voice, that is the God of War voice, and hearing it again just immediately does something to me. Now, gameplay. It is a Metroidvania. You're exploring 2D environments, you're fighting enemies with Kratos' spear and shield, which you can upgrade, you're unlocking gifts of Olympus, like Hermes gives you a double jump, Athena gives you a wall cling, Poseidon gives you underwater stuff, and those abilities gate off new areas in the classic Metroidvania way. There are environmental puzzles, optional side quests, hidden stuff to find, boss fights, and there's also a roguelite mode called the Pit of Agonies that you can do couch co-op with a friend, which is a cool addition honestly. The pixel art looks genuinely great. I mean, Megacat Studios clearly knows what they're doing in that department, and the animations on the enemies, the recreations of classic Greek mythology creatures in 2D, minotaurs, satyrs, undead legionnaires, it all looks really clean and faithful. But okay, here's where I have to be real with you. I came away from this a little frustrated, and I don't think I'm alone in that. The movement is a little stiff, the combat works, but it never really feels exciting or satisfying the way God of War combat should feel. Like, I'm stabbing things with a spear and it's fine, but I never once felt that God of War power fantasy going on. And some reviewers were pretty brutal. I saw one that basically said young Kratos, stripped of his rage, is just kind of a boring character. And I get that, like, what makes Kratos interesting is his fury and his trauma and all of that. And here, he's just like a well-behaved, honorable Spartan kid, and it's just not as compelling. And the game runs 20 hours, which sounds great on paper, except I felt a lot of that padding, like a lot of it. There are sections where I was just wandering around, not totally sure where to go, and the map has some icons and confusing spots, and the world starts to feel kind of repetitive after a while. It's not bad in any obvious way, it's just kind of aggressively mediocre in stretches. Now look, I do think there's a version of this game that a certain God of War fan is going to genuinely enjoy. Like, if you are ride or die for this franchise and you want more lore, more Deimos, more context for the Greek saga, it's there. The story actually has some genuinely touching moments between the brothers, and I think the theme of duty versus loyalty is handled pretty well. And for $30, I think the value argument is at least okay. But as a Metroidvania on its own merits, compared to like Hollow Knight or Blasphemous or anything in that genre, it's just not competing at that level, and I think that's the honest truth of it. So yeah, God of War, Sons of Sparta. It's not a disaster, it's not embarrassing, it's just kind of, it's fine. And for a franchise that's given us some of the greatest games ever made, fine is a little disappointing. I think if you're a diehard fan, it's worth your time. If you're not already invested in this world, I'm not sure it does enough to pull you in. I was not a Nioh guy before this. Like, I played the first one, I bounced off it pretty hard. I tried Nioh 2, bounced off that too. The loot system, the stance system, the sheer amount of stuff being thrown at me, I just kind of felt like the game wasn't for me and I moved on. And then I played this one and I was like, okay, I get it now. I finally get it. So this is Team Ninja Koei Tecmo, came out February 6th, 2026 on PS5 and PC. And I think the reason I finally clicked with this one specifically is because of the two biggest changes they made, the open world structure and the ninja style, and I'll get into both of those. So the basic story is you're playing as Tokugawa Takechiyo, who is the grandchild of Tokugawa Ieyasu, so like literally samurai royalty, and you are about to become the shogun. And then your younger brother Kunimatsu, who basically hates you for being chosen over him, just completely loses it and starts leading a yokai army against you. And on top of that, there's this thing called the Crucible, which is basically this supernatural, corrupted realm that's spreading across Japan. and in order to fight it, you end up time traveling through different historical eras. Sengoku period, Edo period, Heian period. You're meeting real historical figures. And I'll be honest, the story is not like deep literary fiction or anything. It's a cool samurai action story with some genuinely impressive cutscenes and enough betrayal and chaos to keep you going through its roughly 40-hour campaign. Now, the gameplay. So the old Nioh was linear missions. You'd drop into a level, fight your way through, hit a shrine to save, kill a boss, done. Nioh 3 throws all of that out. This is now an open field structure. Big explorable regions, side quests scattered around, optional combat challenges, secrets to find. It's not quite Elden Ring open world, but people have been calling it the Elden Ring of its series, and I think that's pretty fair. And that it could easily be a 100-hour game if you go for everything. I believe it. The world is big, and there's always something pulling you in a new direction. And combat. Okay, so the combat. This is where the game is just, it's on another level, man. You've got two completely different playstyles you can swap between at literally any time with the press of a button. Samurai style is what Nioh has always been. The 3 weapon stances, the key management, the key pulse where you time a button press after attacks to refill your stamina gauge, and they've added a new deflect mechanic which is basically a parry, and an arts proficiency meter that charges up and lets you unleash these enhanced attacks. And then ninja style is just, it's a completely different character. Way more mobile, way more agile, aerial attacks, dodge cancels, a stealth system, a clone technique using a mist mechanic instead of ki. You can attack from behind for bonus damage. You can thin out entire crowds before they even know you're there. I found myself just living in ninja style for most of the game. And the thing is, both styles have completely separate weapon sets and skill trees, so the depth here is just insane. There are also crucibles. These are these special areas within the open world that are kind of like gauntlet zones where everything is significantly harder than the regular field. And these are where the game really punishes you and tests if you actually learned all the stuff the game taught you. They're brutal but incredibly satisfying when you get through them. The loot situation is still, okay, look, it's still a lot. Like, there is still an insane amount of gear dropping constantly, and there are still layers upon layers of upgrade systems, and you are still going to feel overwhelmed at some point. The game does a better job than the previous entries of easing you in. It holds off unlocking a lot of the deeper systems for a dozen or more hours before really opening things up. But if you historically bounced off Nioh because of the complexity, that problem has not been fully solved. It's just better managed. So this is from Ad Hoc Studio, which is a brand new studio made up of former Telltale people, like the people who made Tales from the Borderlands and The Wolf Among Us, The Walking Dead. Some of the best narrative games ever made just went off and started their own thing, and Dispatch is that thing. So our guy is called Robert Robertson III, and yes, that is his full name, and yes, the game is aware of how funny that is. Robert is a superhero called Mecha Man. He's got this incredible mechanized suit, and he's out there protecting Los Angeles. And then his nemesis just absolutely destroys the suit in battle, and suddenly Robert has no powers, no identity, and no idea what to do with himself. And he ends up getting offered a job at the Superhero Dispatch Network, the SDN, which is basically like a superhero management office, and not as a hero, as a dispatcher, like the guy behind the desk, the guy on the headset. And his whole job is managing this team of ex-supervillains who are being given a shot at redemption, while also slowly trying to rebuild his suit and figure out who he even is without it. And I just think that premise is so good. Now, and this is important to understand before you go in, this is a narrative game. Like, this is way closer to a Telltale game than it is to like an action game or an RPG. The whole thing is basically pre-rendered cinematics and dialogue choices with some light gameplay stuff layered on top. Like, if you go in expecting a lot of deep gameplay systems, you're going to be surprised. But what is there is genuinely cool. So you've got your dispatching loop, you pull up this map, emergencies pop up across the city, and you have to figure out which hero or heroes to send based on their skills, their personality, their cooldowns, risk level, and if you send the right combination of people, it goes well. Send the wrong people and stuff can go sideways. And then there's a hacking minigame where you're navigating these little pathways in a timed sequence, and you can level up your heroes, upgrade their skills, manage their relationships. The dispatching loop doesn't fully open up until later episodes, but once it does, it's genuinely satisfying. And the choices, look, choices in narrative games are always a little hit or miss in terms of how much they actually matter, and Dispatch is mostly really good about this. Like, I was genuinely torn on so many decisions. The writing is good enough that almost every option feels like the right one, and that tension is exactly what you want from this kind of game. There were a few moments where I made what I thought were good choices, and the outcome was not what I expected, and I was just sitting there like, what? But honestly, I think most of that is just the nature of the genre. It's hard to fully account for every branch when there are this many of them. Now, there are some things. The actual game elements, the dispatching, the hacking, feel a little thin in the first few episodes, like it takes a while for the mechanics to actually start mattering in a real way, and some people might bounce off it early because of that. And the gameplay stuff in general, even when it opens up, is never going to be the reason you play this. You play this for the story and the characters and the writing. If that's not your thing, this game is not going to change your mind.
Which I'm sure you would appreciate. Been nice that we get to spend more time together, right? The Z team might fuck up for a while.
I feel like I have to start this one by talking about what this game actually is and where it comes from, because that context matters a lot. So Tarsier Studios, these are the people who made Little Nightmares 1 and 2, both incredible games, both really well loved, and then Bandai Namco capped the Little Nightmares IP and handed Little Nightmares 3 off to Supermassive Games, which, look, Supermassive are fine, they do their thing, but Little Nightmares 3 was just kind of middling. It didn't really land the way the first two did. And meanwhile, Tarsier just went off and did their own thing, and Reanimal is that thing, and I just want to say, good. I'm so glad that's what happened, because this game is way more interesting and way more ambitious than anything Little Nightmares 3 was doing. So this came out February 13th, 2026 on pretty much everything, PS5, Xbox Series, PC, and even Nintendo Switch 2. It's $40, which is going to be a talking point, and I'll get to that. And the basic setup is you're a brother and a sister. That's it. They don't even have names really, they're just the boy and the girl. You start with the boy waking up on a boat, he finds the girl drowning in the water nearby, he pulls her out, and together they set out to find their three missing friends, Hood, Bucket, and Bandage, on this hellish island that used to be their home. And from there, the game just kind of throws you into the deep end and trusts you to figure stuff out. There are no waypoints, there's barely any UI, the camera and lighting just sort of nudge you in the right direction, and you follow it and try not to get absolutely destroyed by the nightmare creatures around every corner. And the creatures, man. I need to talk about the creatures, because this is where Reanimal goes way past Little Nightmares in terms of just raw, disturbing energy. Like, Little Nightmares had that kind of dark fairy tale thing going on, grotesque but in this stylized way that was almost beautiful. Reanimal does not have that. Reanimal is just... it's body horror. It's full-on uncomfortable, skin-crawling, I don't want to look at that, but I can't stop body horror. Like, there are these deformed giants that just contort themselves into shapes that are wrong. There are boneless corpses that hang from trees and then just slither down and come after you like some kind of horrible limp snake thing. I've seen a lot of horror games, and I think the creature design here genuinely got to me in a way that I didn't fully expect going in. Now, gameplay. So if you've played Little Nightmares, you basically know the structure. You're small and powerless in a huge, hostile world. You're exploring, you're solving environmental puzzles, you're sneaking past things, and then every once in a while something spots you and you're just absolutely running for your life, and it's terrifying. The big new additions here are the co-op and the boat. So co-op, the game is fully playable solo with an AI companion, or you can play with a friend locally or online, and there's even a friends pass, so only one person needs to own the full game for both of you to play together, which is a really cool thing to include at a $40 price point, honestly. And I played both solo and with a friend, and I genuinely think playing with someone else is the intended experience. Like, Tarsier specifically designed the camera to keep both characters in frame at all times. And there is something about going through this stuff with another person next to you, that shared tension and shared panic, that just makes it hit way differently. The boat is the other big thing. The game is way more open than Little Nightmares ever was. You've got this island with multiple locations and you navigate between them on your boat, which means there's actually a sense of exploration and non-linearity here. You can poke around, find optional stuff, find collectibles, find lore fragments. And the lore and storytelling, okay, this is kind of a whole thing. The story is deliberately vague and impressionistic, like nobody is explaining to you what's going on. There's minimal dialogue, and what dialogue exists is just the kids talking in these flat, exhausted voices, like they're too tired and too traumatized to even emote properly. And I'll be honest, when I first finished the game, I was a little bit like, wait, what? Like, I wasn't totally sure what I had just experienced, but then I sat with it for a day and I kind of loved that. There's some really heavy thematic threads running through this game around war and atrocity and what humans do to each other, and I think the deliberately vague presentation actually makes it land harder than if they just explained it all to you. Now, and I have to be real with you, the big complaint, and the one I think is totally legitimate, is the length. I finished this in about 4 to 5 hours, some people finished it in 3, and at $40, that is a conversation worth having. Like, I personally think the quality is high enough that I felt okay about it, but I completely understand people who feel like they didn't get enough game for that price. There's a season pass with 3 chapters of DLC coming, first one in summer 2026, and honestly, I think that content is probably going to fill out the experience a lot, but that stuff should probably just be in the base game. That's a fair criticism. The other thing is the gameplay itself hasn't really evolved much from Little Nightmares. Like, the puzzle stuff is fine, the chase sequences are genuinely tense and great, but the light combat sections are just kind of there. You spam an attack button, enemies die, it's not really the point of the game, and everyone knows it's not really the point of the game, but it does occasionally feel clunky. And the AI companion can sometimes block you or get in your way during tense moments, which, like, not the worst thing in the world, but definitely annoying when it happens. But look, overall, I think Reanimal is legitimately great. It's bold and it's dark and it commits fully to what it's trying to be, and I respect the hell out of that. It's sitting on an 84 on Metacritic, and I think that's about right. I need to start by saying this game came out of basically nowhere for me. So, the setup. You are Hana. She's this young woman living in the fictional city of Eriksholm, which is basically an alternate history version of like 1900s Scandinavia. And the city is a mess. There's a plague called heartpox ripping through the working class, there's this heavy authoritarian police presence, class warfare, the whole thing. It's dark and grimy and oppressive, and it feels alive. And Hana has been sick, right? She's been recovering from the heartpox, and her brother Herman has been taking care of her. And then Herman goes missing. Like, he says he'll be back by nightfall, and then the police show up at the door asking questions about him. And Hana being Hana, and she's got this great energy. Like, she's a little spiky, a little brash, walls up, hard exterior, she's had a rough life. She immediately does not trust these cops for a single second, and she slips away. And now you're off. She's going to find her brother and figure out what he got himself into. And that mystery slowly unravels across the whole game into this genuinely interesting conspiracy that pulls in abandoned mines and sewer canals and the most powerful people in the city. Now, the game is an isometric stealth game, and I want to be real with you about what that means, because I think the way it's been described and compared to other games in the genre can set the wrong expectations. Like, people are going to say commandos, they're going to say desperados, they're going to say shadow tactics, and I understand why, because visually it looks like that family of game, top-down, multiple characters, stealth. But it's actually quite a bit more linear than those games, and that is either going to be completely fine for you, or it is going to be the thing that bothers you most about it. Those other games I mentioned, Desperados, Shadow Tactics, they're about creative problem solving. There's like 5 different valid ways to get through a situation, and you're figuring out what works best for you. Eriksholm is more like a puzzle game, where there's a right answer and you're finding it. Like, the game has an idea of how it wants you to get from A to B, and your job is to figure out what that idea is. And once you do, it clicks and it feels great. But if you get stuck on something and you're poking around trying to find your own creative solution, you might not find it because there might not be one. That's just the truth of how this game is designed. Now, here's where I want to push back on people who are using that as a reason to dismiss the game entirely, because I don't think that's fair. Because within that linear structure, like within those puzzle boxes, the design is actually really smart and really satisfying. And the big reason for that is the 3 characters. So you start the whole game as just Hana, and Hana can crawl through vents, she can hide in shadows, and she's got this blowpipe with sleep darts. And for the first chunk of the game, it's just her, and honestly, it's a little basic. Like, it's essentially an extended tutorial, and you might start wondering if the game is going to open up. And then Alva shows up. Alva is this young revolutionary type. She's got fire in her, completely different energy from Hana, and gameplay-wise, she can climb drain pipes up to rooftops, and she's got a slingshot that can shoot pebbles to make noise and distract guards, or hit out light sources to create darkness. And suddenly, you've got like a whole different layer, because now you can set up scenarios where Alva creates the opening and Hana executes through it. And then Sebastian joins. He's this big, quiet guy, kind of solitary, keeps to himself, but he can physically grab guards and choke them out, and he can swim in the water to reach lower areas. And the moment you have all 3 of these characters working together, that's when the game really sings. Like, genuinely. You're up on a rooftop with Alva, you knock out a streetlight, Hana slips forward through the darkness, Sebastian takes out the guy in the back, and there's this like orchestral quality to it, where it all comes together perfectly, and you feel so clever, even though the game kind of guided you there. Goodnight Universe, when I first heard the premise of this game, I honestly kinda laughed. Like, okay, you play as a baby with psychic powers, sure, that sounds like a bit, that sounds like a joke. And then I played it, and I felt genuinely stupid for dismissing it even for a second, because this game is... man, this one got me. Like, it really genuinely got me in a way I wasn't prepared for at all. So this is from Nice Dream, the same studio that made Before Your Eyes back in 2021, and if you haven't played Before Your Eyes, the whole thing with that game was that it used your webcam, and you literally blinked to progress the story. Like, blinking was the mechanic. And it was this incredibly emotional short game that a lot of people cried at, and it has this devoted following. And Goodnight Universe is their follow-up, and it came out November 11th, 2025 on basically everything. PS5, Xbox Series, Switch 2, PC, it's $20, and I want to say that price point up front because I think people see $20 and immediately think small and cheap, and this is not that. This is a full, complete, emotional experience. So, okay, you are Isaac, and Isaac is a 6-month-old baby. And I know that sounds insane, but here's the thing. Isaac narrates his own story in this smooth, thoughtful adult voice, and you're basically reliving his childhood memories as he reflects on them from adulthood. And from literally birth, this kid knows something is off about himself. He can think like an adult, he can problem solve, he can read minds through telepathy, he can move objects with telekinesis. And what starts as this warm, cozy domestic thing, like you're just smashing your high chair tray and watching a kid's TV show called Gilbert the Goat, and it's adorable, very quickly starts to spiral into something much bigger and darker when a secretive tech corporation realizes what Isaac is and decides they want him. And that's all I'll say about the story, because this is one of those games where you really should just experience it yourself. And the family. I have to talk about the family because that is the actual heart of this whole thing. You've got his parents, his older teenage sister, his grandfather, and through Isaac's telepathy you can literally hear what each of them is actually thinking versus what they're saying out loud, and the gap between those two things is where all the real emotion lives in this game. Like, his parents are exhausted and scared, and trying to hold it together and pretending everything is fine, and his sister has her own whole thing going on that she's hiding. Now, the gameplay. So, like Before Your Eyes, there's a webcam mode. On PC and Switch 2, you can literally use your face to play. You calibrate your eyes, your expressions, happy, sad, neutral, and then closing your eyes at certain moments lets you rearrange scenes like building blocks. Blinking can flip light switches. Frowning or smiling actually matters in emotional moments. And it's not a gimmick, it creates a level of immersion that's genuinely striking, making you feel more connected to Isaac's experience, especially during intense or tender moments. Overall, I walked away from Goodnight Universe just sitting quietly for a minute. Like, I just sat there. It's one of those games that quietly sits with you long after the credits roll.
They will take care of you.
What the hell?
And then, when you're ready, they will get you home.
I was not a Death Stranding guy. Like, I played the first one, I got through it, and I came away respecting it way more than I enjoyed it. Like, I respected what Kojima was doing, I thought the world was fascinating, but the moment-to-moment stuff just kind of wore on me, and I put it down and moved on. And I think that is actually the most important thing to know before I talk about this game, because I went in skeptical, and I came out the other side just... man. So this came out June 26, 2025 on PS5, and a PC port just got announced for March 19th, 2026, with Nixxes handling it and adding ultra-wide support, upscaling, frame generation, all the good stuff. So if you're a PC person, your time is basically right now. Kojima Productions, published by Sony, running on the Decima engine, same engine as Horizon, and I just want to say up front that this is one of the best looking games I have ever seen in my life. Like, I was stopping constantly just to look around, and I don't think that's a stretch at all. Character faces, environments, weather effects, it is stunning on every level. So the basic setup. Your back is Sam Porter Bridges, and he has left the UCA to live a quiet life after the events of the first game, and then circumstances pull him out of that and he ends up in Mexico first and then Australia, connecting the chiral network in these new parts of the world. And that's about as much story as I'll give you, because this is a Kojima game and you have to experience it yourself. What I will say is that the story reveals itself slowly and guardedly up until the final act, and then the final act just absolutely goes for it. Now, the gameplay. So look, At its core, it is still Death Stranding. You are still a porter, you are still making deliveries across massive open landscapes, managing your balance and your cargo, connecting preppers to the network. If that fundamentally did not work for you in the first game, I want to be honest with you, this is still that game. Death Stranding 2 basks in familiarity, and I think it's fair, but here's the thing. Everything around that core is just so much better. So much better. You get access to a vehicle within the first hour or two, a tri-cruiser, basically a three-wheeled bike, and eventually a full off-roader truck thing that you can load up with cargo and upgrade with turrets and a cargo retriever. And then the world itself is just so much more dynamic and alive. Rivers can flood or dry up now, rock slides can turn an easy walk into a frantic sprint, earthquakes spew tar and chiral creatures into areas that were clear 10 minutes ago. There's a full day and night cycle, so I'm actually reading the environment, actually paying attention to weather forecasts from a crew member who tracks that stuff, and making real decisions about when and how to move. Now, I have to be real with you about the combat, because it is a bigger part of this game than the first, and the reception on it is mixed. There's way more combat this time around, more stealth sections that feel reminiscent of Metal Gear Solid, more action situations, but Sam doesn't play as fun as a character like Venom Snake. He's slower, his weapons are deliberately restrictive, and the enemies are dumber than you'd want. And some of the stealth sections are genuinely really cool, but it never reaches the mechanical satisfaction of a dedicated action game, and I think some people expecting that are going to be let down. But look, overall, like I said, I went in skeptical and I came out converted. Okay, so Mafia, the old country, and the first thing worth knowing is that it's $50, it's linear, no open world, and it's about 8 to 9 hours long. And I think how you feel about that going in is basically going to determine how you feel coming out, because that is the game, that's the whole thing. And look, I actually think that's fine. I think we've gotten so conditioned to every game needing to be 60 hours that we forget sometimes a tight, focused story that doesn't waste your time is actually kind of refreshing. So it came out August 8th, 2025 on PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. You're playing as Enzo Favara, and Enzo grew up as a Caruso, basically a child slave forced to work in Sicilian sulfur mines in the early 1900s. And now, as a young adult, his only real way out of that life is joining the Teresi crime family specifically under Don Teresi, who is just this perfectly written old-world mob boss. And the whole story is Enzo working his way up from nothing and figuring out what loyalty actually costs him. It's a classic mob story structure. If you've seen The Godfather or Goodfellas, you go roughly the shape of where this goes. The setting is also doing a lot of work here. 1900s rural Sicily, sun-baked stone villages on hilltops, olive groves, narrow alleyways, sulfur mines carved into the earth. And it looks really good. The art direction is committed and it pays off. Feels like a place with a specific texture and temperature to it. Character faces especially look great. Unreal Engine 5 with metahuman tech, and there are moments in cutscenes where the faces are just really convincing. Gameplay is third-person shooting, melee brawling, stealth, horseback riding, and early 1900s cars. The shooting feels good, and the thing I appreciated most about it is that ammo is actually limited. Like, you feel resource pressure. You're actually thinking about whether you want to engage or try to sneak around. And the weapons feel right for the era. And horseback riding is actually really solid. Riding through the Sicilian countryside at different times of day just looks and feels good in a way I wasn't really expecting. The stealth is where I had the most issues, honestly. Like, it's there, it adds variety, it fits the whole mob story thing perfectly, but the enemy awareness is inconsistent in a way that got on my nerves. Like, sometimes I'd do something that should have gotten me caught immediately and nothing happened, and other times I'd barely move wrong and suddenly everyone knows where I am. It's not broken, but it's definitely the roughest part of the game mechanically. After launch, they also dropped a free update called Free Ride Mode, which adds horse races, car races, combat challenges, new outfits, new weapons, so there's a bit more to do now if you want to poke around after the story. It doesn't transform the game into something huge, but it's a nice addition. Now, yeah, sadly, overall the game has some issues, like the stealth is inconsistent, some missions in the middle stretch don't have the same energy as the opening and the final act, and yeah, some people are going to look at 8 to 9 hours and $50 and just not be okay with that math. I get it. But I came away just satisfied in that specific way where a story that knew exactly what it wanted to be and didn't overstay its welcome just feels complete, like it said what it wanted to say and got out, and honestly, more games could stand to do that. The first thing I have to say is this game started as DLC. Like, it was supposed to be a downloadable content pack for Dying Light 2, and then a data miner leaked the whole script in 2023, and Techland just went, alright, screw it, we're making it a full game. And honestly, good. because what they ended up making is way too big and way too good to have just been DLC tacked on to Dying Light 2. So this came out September 18th, 2025 on PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. And the big deal here, the thing people were genuinely excited about before it even came out, is that Kyle Crane is back. And if you played the first Dying Light, you know exactly why that matters. Crane is just a great protagonist. He's got this dry wit, this grounded blue-collar energy, and Roger Craig Smith's performance is just really good. And the story picks up 13 years after the first game, after the events of The Following, where Crane basically sacrificed himself and got infected. He's been on the run from the GRE for a decade before getting captured by this guy called the Baron, who has been using Crane as a human guinea pig for his experiments for 13 years straight. And when the game starts, Crane finally escapes, and he is pissed. And now he's got this mix of human and zombie DNA in him from all those experiments, which is both a curse and a weapon, and he wants to find the Baron and make him pay for everything. It's way more emotionally grounded than Dying Light 2's story ever was. The setting is Castor Woods, this area inspired by the Swiss Alps that used to be a popular tourist destination before the outbreak. So you've got this beautiful mountain countryside that's now completely overrun. And it's a really smart setting because it mixes all these different environments: a tourist town, farmland, a national park, swamps, and industrial area. So the open world feels varied, and you're not just running through the same gray urban streets the whole time. Now the gameplay. So the core Dying Light stuff is all here, and it's all better than it's ever been. The parkour is still first person, and it still feels incredible. Running across rooftops, vaulting obstacles, climbing up buildings, the movement system has been upgraded, and I just found myself running around for the sake of running around constantly because it feels so good. Like, that is the whole series' superpower, and they have not lost it. And the day and night cycle is back, and the night is still genuinely scary. Like, I know that sounds like a cliche thing to say about a zombie game, but the volatiles that come out at night are just properly threatening. Running through the dark woods with something hunting you and the only thing keeping you safe being how fast and smart you move, that tension never gets old for me. And then there's Beast Mode, which is the big new thing. So because of what the Baron did to Crane, he can essentially flip a switch and go full monster. Like, he just transforms into this brutal, unstoppable thing and starts ripping enemies apart with his bare hands, skull crushing, tearing heads off, just completely going off in ways that the regular weapon combat doesn't let you do. And it feels great, like viscerally satisfying in this really dumb, fun way that I was not expecting. And it's not just a power fantasy button, you have to manage it, because using it too much pushes Crane further toward losing his humanity, and there are consequences to that. So there's this constant tension between using this insane power you have and trying to stay human, which ties directly into the story, and I thought that was a really clean piece of design.
What do you mean each chimera has a different form of GSB?
Each variant of GSB alters the chimera's genetic structure in a unique way.